Hi, I'm Debbie Whitty, and I own the company Trilogy Saddles and Performance Saddlery. And today I'm here with Shannon Duick and her mare Aisha. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 7 points of saddle fitting so that you can use them in your everyday practice when you're evaluating your saddle. So first I'm going to have Shannon give you a little bit of background on her mare Aisha.
Well, this is Aisha. She is, as you see, a very big horse, and she's a 9-year-old Oldenburg mare. I've had her for 2.5 years, and she just started Grand Prix this year, and she just did her first CDI last weekend.
And so now we're going to go through the 7 points of saddle fitting, and to begin with, the point 1 will be the center of the saddle, which is called the gullet. Some people call it the channel. And you want to make sure that you have 3 fingers worth of clearance from side to side and up the center. And what that does is it gives enough clearance through the spine so there's no pressure laterally against the spine so that there's pinching and discomfort. So what we will do is run up our 3 fingers, and you can see that we have ample space all the way up through, which gives the horse no pressure on the spine at all. And so Shannon, you can see that we've got lots of room both ways, and that's really important. You'll find some saddles are a little bit bigger, and they actually can get a little sloppy, especially if you have a narrower horse that has a more prominent spine. So now I'm going to put the saddle on so we can go through the 7 points of saddle fitting, and you can evaluate your horse yourself. So I try to be really careful when I set the saddle down on the horse so that it's just like when you mount. You don't want to just plunk down on the horse's back because that creates a lot of pressure, undue pressure, and can make a horse really unhappy. And by the end of a saddle fitting, we can usually take a sensitive horse that's even a little girthy. We can actually make them less sensitive and desensitize them to all of those things. So what we're going to do, and we're looking for a horse that's standing square with all 4 feet standing square, which she is. We're going to go through, number 1 was the channel, which you just saw, the gullet. Number 2 is going to be how much clearance we have through the pommel. And what we're looking for is adequate clearance. We're looking for clearance enough so that we don't have the saddle sitting backwards because there's too much clearance like this, or it's not sitting too low, which actually will create a lot of pressure on the withers, which is really problematic. So we also must consider what sort of padding that they're going to be using. And we put a little pressure down, and Shannon, you can see that you can stick your hand in there.
Yep, I'm getting like with 3 fingers.
And that's great. That's great, because when the rider is mounted, then we have compression, and the saddle will actually sit a little bit lower than that. So the next step will be that we're going to go down the front of the saddle and the angle of the tree. And the angle of the tree, we want it to match the horse's body so that it mirrors the horse's body, so that it's nice and smooth and even. So Shannon, stick your hand on through, and you're going to find that the tree actually matches her body really well. So take your hand and stick it through and slide it through.
And it doesn't feel any different.
No.
You've got even pressure there.
It's nice and smooth.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the tree point, which ends up being about here on a dressage saddle, the tree point's a little longer than in a jumping saddle. There is no pressure because a horse is built almost like a pear, so that they widen out, and if the tree points come into the widest part of the pear, that means you're going to have a lot of pressure and a really uncomfortable horse. So we don't have any of those things going on at all. Next, we're going to be looking at the balance point so that you can sit over your ear, your shoulder, your hip, your heel, so you sit over the top of your leg. And it gives you a really nice balance point, and you can see that we're in really good shape with this.
And how do I tell?
How you tell is you look for the deepest point of the saddle, which is right about here, and that's where you're going to
where my center of balance.
Exactly, your 3-point seat will center around that deepest part. And then you have the alignment is going to be proper from there.
Right.
The next thing we're going to look for is bridge and rock. Bridging is where you have pressure in the front and pressure in the back, and there's no contact in between. And you can stick your hand up under. I don't mind if I can get my fingertips in, But if I can stick my whole hand in and move it around, that means we're going to have a difficult time because the horse is getting pressure in the front and pressure in the back. And so then they're going to get really sore, and then they start
In those two places?
in those two places because they hollow their back more.
Yeah.
Because we look for the panel to be covering their back and have even pressure distribution the whole way through. So we're going to look for that, but then we also look at the same time, we look for rocking. And rocking is where the saddle will go like this. And what it creates, it's like when you were a child and you had a rocking chair and you were on a hardwood floor and you would rock really vigorously.
Yeah.
What it does is it makes the saddle, like the rocking chair, travel all over that hardwood floor. And kids think it's fun, but the horses do not. So that creates a real problem. So how you check for that is you have your hand on the top and we run your hand underneath. And you'll find that the contact is consistent. So I'm going to switch spots with you for just a moment.
Okay.
Have you come over here. Put one hand on the top.
Yeah.
And the other hand, you run it right underneath.
Yeah.
Just your fingertips, not to displace the saddle, but just enough so that you can feel if there is any gaping or if there are any low spots in there.
I don't know, I think that looks pretty well fitted.
Yeah.
To her, it feels good.
Yeah, and you continue to watch and monitor that your horse is standing on all 4 feet again, and which she is in just a second.
She will be.
Yeah. And so now we're going to go to the last point, which is we're looking for the horse to have a lot of stability on their back, and we want as much panel as we can on their back and on their rib cage. When you get past the 18th rib, that's just the lumbar region, which has no support from the rib cage. So the saddle just sits on top of the rib cage when we have it in front of the 18th rib. When we cross over the 18th rib, you start to get extreme amounts of pressure and great discomfort for the horse. So how we check for that is we take our hand and we run forward from right where the swirl and the hip are, and we're going to come right forward like this. You can feel the back of her rib cage. And if you've ever seen an anatomy picture, the rib cage does go up in an angle, and you can see it from here. And it does go up in an angle, like this. And we've got plenty of room. The saddle position, she could carry a much larger saddle than she already does. This happens to be an 18-inch saddle, but she could carry a much larger saddle. Horses are just like people. They're short-waisted and they're long-waisted. And so that's what you have to check and see is if you have a person with a really large seat on a very short-backed compressed rib cage, you're going to have a lot of difficulty and a lot of soreness. So then, last I'm going to make sure that you can see what I do for just a quick evaluation of their back. So this is something that you can all do at home, and you do every day when you're brushing them. You actually are checking to see if the horse is a little sensitive. I've had many horses that have been palpated so much with people sticking their fingernails in and making the horse uncomfortable and making it really unhappy. So instead, what I recommend is that you take the pads of your fingertips and you run them around under your saddle position. Now, if the horse is reactive in any place, then you go someplace else for a moment and make sure that it's not actually under the saddle in the saddle position. Thank you. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go along this longissimus dorsi. There's a muscle right here, and that's the biggest thing that we check for is how the musculature feels under that saddle position. So as I run my fingers down through along the spine, I'm looking for the horse to have a positive rebound in the musculature. And if I find any big holes or dents, then I worry.
Yes.
Then that's notable. And she feels really good through there. And then I go down a second layer, still on the longissimus dorsi. And then I go along the spine, right through here on each side. and you'll feel the spinal process. The top of the spine is called the dorsal process. It's a little head. So as you go along, your finger will go bump, 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 bump. When you feel something in between, that's when you want to say to your vet, you know, it feels like there's a little swelling or little inflammation, but that's what it will show you.
And we will get a positive reaction from her if she is sore.
And that's really good. She's sound as a dollar.
Yeah, she doesn't look very reactive. That's good.
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah.
So I hope that this has brought you to a place where you feel comfortable evaluating your horse and your saddle position just enough so that you can say to the experts, this is what I'm finding with my horse. Is that a concern or is that not a concern? And so this is a nice time that we've had together, and I appreciate all of your time. And this is Debbie Whitty and Shannon Duick and Aisha, and thank you very much.